In today's episode, Tammy asks, are you seeing the use of social media influencers for B2B on the rise? I think most of us primarily think of it in terms of B2C. That's funny because for me, B2B influencer marketing is already huge, especially in technology, in B2B technology, marketing, technology, IT, servers, cloud, all that stuff. There is a tremendous influencer marketing wave already in place. Now, I work with IBM, for example. Got the lovely IBM certificate right here. I work with IBM on cloud and on analytics and things like that, and help promote things like IBM Watson Studio, for example. FTC disclosure, my company is an IBM business partner. If you buy anything from us for IBM, we get some compensation for it. And there's a tremendous amount of, I would say, smaller influencer activity than B2C. When we think of B2C, we have a tendency to think of like really big B2C influencers, like the Kardashians, right? um, and major celebrities, but there are also a ton of other folks in B2C with smaller audiences. The same is true in B2B. There are a few like really big B2B influencers. Typically, they're also speakers. For example, someone like a Malcolm Gladwell, who is very popular in B2B circles. Someone like a Seth Godin, very popular in B2B circles. That wouldn't necessarily be popular in the B2C circles. And then there is I think a much larger tier of mid-level influencers than in B2C. In B2C, it's kind of, you have the major celebrities and you have everybody with 500 followers on Instagram trying to be a food influencer. In B2B, there is, I think, much more of that granularity, which is, you can have people with hundreds of thousands of followers, even hundreds of followers, as far in terms of audience sizes, and they do okay because the dynamics of B2B sales are that you don't need a lot of people. You need the right people. Whereas on B2C, you do need volume, except for high-value sales like mortgages. But on B2B, if the top 50 CMOs in the world all follow you, guess what? You only need 50 people to be incredibly influential. Because most B2B sales are also complex sales, there's also more nuance about where an influencer plays a role. With B2C, particularly transactional B2C, the purchase cycle is very short, so an influencer has to be able to get awareness, build consideration, get evaluation, and purchase all within a very short period of time. With B2B, you can be influential just in a very narrow part of a very large sales cycle and still be able to deliver tremendous value to a company, because a company selling, for example, let's say firewalls, they may have no problem with awareness, but they may have a great deal of issues with credibility. Like people may not understand that their firewall is slightly more secure than the competitors, but in a unique way. And so an influencer who can speak credibly about how modern threats are targeted towards a very specific little angle can be very influential in overcoming buyers' hesitation. Someone like a Brian Krebs, for example, or Bruce Schneier would be the type of people that say, okay, yep, that person can help overcome our credibility issues. So there's a difference there. B2B, particularly complex B2B, I would argue is also requires a lot more very specific domain expertise than their counterparts in B2C. Someone with 5,000 followers in B2B who's specific in, say, machine learning, that's someone who's going to need to be able to talk to their audience credibly about the very detailed specifics of machine learning. Like, this person is an expert, maybe even in just reinforcement learning, or maybe they're just influential in ETL. Whereas someone with 5,000 followers in B2C, they still require expertise. They still need to know what they're talking about. But there may not be as much nuance to it. Someone, for example, who's doing travel photography and has 5,000 followers, they've got to go to interesting places, and they should have a unique point of view that is different than everybody else who's doing travel photography. But they don't necessarily need to be exacting in their expertise in order to be credible, and in order to create influence, to create awareness, consideration, evaluation, and purchase. So those are the differences, I would say, between the two influencers, and one of the reasons why people don't think of B2B influencers first. I think there's tremendous potential for influencers in B2B. There's also one other catch. B2C is very difficult to quantify, particularly when there's so much other interference, big brand campaigns and stuff like that. On the B2B side, B2B traditionally has been much better at analytics, tracking, and ROI. Marketing automation systems are typically tuned for B2B, which means that influencers have to be able to prove their value much more rigidly than B2C. In B2C, you can have someone say, hey, this celebrity was at our car launch and got 100 million people to look at the car, and that's a success. In B2B, it's like, so how many leads did you drive? Right? How many MQLs showed up in our marketing automation software? How many opportunities did you bring in? How many deals have you pushed forward? Because of the nature of B2B analytics, it can be a little more challenging for influencers to be able to really prove their value. Not always, but companies in B2B do take a much harder look at, like, what's the ROI here, than a B2C company that is willing to accept, like, hey, you just helped build our brand, right? We're not even going to attempt to quantify it. We just know that having your name attached to our thing is a good thing. I would definitely say, for any company that is considering B2B influencers, look at your cost per acquisition for new audience in particular. Go and do your numbers. Like, what does it cost you to get a lead? What does it cost you to get a prospect? What does it cost you to get an MQL or an SQL or whatever it is in your marketing automation system? And then when you start looking at influencers, say, okay, in influencer, in your experience, have you brought in 50 prospects? If we pay for you to speak at this show, what's the likelihood you'll move ahead the KPI that you care about most? You will find, depending on the influencer, if it's the right influencers, just like on B2C, if it's the right influencers, they will move the needle for you on the right metrics that move your business forward. I know in a campaign I did for IBM, one of the things that we were being asked to do is drive traffic to a particular site, and we all have very good analytics, and be able to show, yep, hey, look, this many more people walked in the door and signed up for a free trial of the thing, and that's how success was measured. And so there's a lot of great ways to measure B2B influencers. There's a lot of great B2B influencers out there, and it is absolutely something that B2B marketers should be considering and evaluating and deciding, yep, I want that person's expertise to be loaned to my brand and my products and services to drive my marketing numbers. So great question, Tammy. As always, if you got questions, please leave them in the comments, and subscribe to the YouTube channel and the newsletter. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.